And welcome into the Bobby Carpenter Show right here on the Big Play Network. Coming at you each and every week. And you know what? Get to break down another Buckeye victory. A little scary this time up in Madison. Halloween, Buckeyes get it done 24-10. Obviously a big challenge there. So we'll break down that. We'll look, as always, at the top stories around college football. Because even though the Buckeyes maybe didn't cover that line by half a point, it's always better to get a win as a couple of teams ranked get taken down in some big upsets. We're going to look at this game and preview coming up this week with Rutgers, which should be an entertaining one. That'll be, I believe, at home in the Horseshoe. We got our questions from our listeners with the Tailgate, Real Truck Tailgate Talk, which is always one of the best ones. But as we sit here and look at this, Schlegs, what are some of your biggest takeaways from this game in which Ohio State traveled up to Madison and got a little hairy there in the middle, but ultimately pulled away late?
Well, let's talk about the two horses, right, that were absolutely phenomenal in this game, and that's Marvin Harrison Jr. He had 123 yards, averaged 20.5 a catch, 2 touchdowns. And what I really loved is how they were able to utilize him in the offense. They had Xavier Johnson running some sweeps right behind the quarterback. Then they brought him. Then, they had some, long crossing over routes. And again, listen, when Kyle has a pocket, he can step up and deliver a throw. He normally throws a really good football, and you saw that on a couple of those plays. The touchdown catch in the corner of the end zone, that was fantastic. And then just the way Trevion Henderson ran the football in this game, 162 yards, 1 touchdown. He had 45 yards out of the backfield. Listen, he was running. You saw his mindset, like he was like clapping, like he wanted to just hit the home run, but also on the plays where he had to be patient and just get 4 or 5 or 3. He did that. He made some guys miss, and then how they utilized him, they spread him out. He was a wide receiver. Then he kind of ran like a little wheel route. He missed that one in the end zone, but I just like the way that they were utilizing him in all facets. Now, part of that is because Emeka wasn't there. So, but again, that you have dudes like that can prevent or present mismatches, especially when you want to play man and walk a linebacker out to that guy. Guess what? That's a competitive advantage for Ohio State. So those were some things that I really took away, along with the defense, again, just giving up 10 points in Madison at night. The defense is playing really, really well, Bob.
Yeah, I thought Braden Locke played pretty well for Wisconsin, given what he was tasked to do with. I think Trevion Henderson, he gives that added explosion in the run game, Schlegs. When there's there to burst, and his touchdown was essentially the one that sealed the game. It was a huge score for him and for the rest of the team. And he can find that. They ran the little pitch. I know you love the little boundary pitch play, a little zone, gave him a little bit of space, hit a seam, had a nice long run there, but they fed him, man. 24 carries for Trey. That's a lot. Chip having 6, Xavier Johnson. You look at that, it looked like Ohio State was making a concerted effort to run the football. And with that, they possessed the ball for 35 minutes.
Yeah.
So you start looking at some of your key metrics in the game, field position, turnovers. Obviously lost the turnover battle 3-1. We'll talk about Kyle. He's got to get some things cleaned up. It was not his best game by far.
Right.
But rushing doubled up Wisconsin, the rushing battle, 181 to I think 94. And then on third downs, 6 of 13, close to 50%, which is really stinking good. And then defensively, only giving up 6 of 16. And some of those 6 of 16 Schlegs on the defensive side, I mean, the one that was backed up in their own end zone on 3rd and 15, there was a couple other 3rd and longs they let get out. You would have felt better if you could have held them to maybe 3 of 13 or 3 of 16, which was what it kind of looked like it was going. And so that defense, I think, has to be a little bit better in some of those long yardage plays to be able to get that going and continue to get off the field. But like you said, they gave up about 250 yards of total offense, 10 points. They got off the field pretty well on 3rd down. I thought it was a pretty strong performance. You look at it, you won by 14. The line was 14.5. I mean, ideally, if you're James Franklin, you probably kick a field goal at the end of the game instead of taking the knee Schlegs and ultimately covering the number there. Maybe throw it up 17, going by 17, 27-10. But I thought they did a good job outside of that offensive line, Schlegs. I thought the offensive line, ironically, blocked better in the running game than they did in the passing game for Kyle McCord.
Yeah, we haven't really seen that. Now, again, schematically, they did some things to help these guys. So you saw the close bunch, right? So that means there's a point guy, there's another wide receiver. And there was a great question on Twitter about like K touching the lineman and how many times, they do that and do they break this down? And guess what? I mean, these are all things that we're looking because he had his hand on the tackle, but I'm just going to talk about that toss play. And what it does is, in essence, the tackle and Cade pulled on that. They cracked down and they pulled to give him some space, which is what he does, Trevion, really well. The other thing that they did in this game is they started the running back out of like the true pistol behind the quarterback.
Yeah.
I really like that on the inside runs because you have to read through your guards to the running back. He's deeper. You don't really necessarily know what's going. So it keeps you more honest as a defender. So that being said, to your point about
it gives
Kyle,
you like the vertical, it gives you the vertical element coming downhill.
Because he can see.
Yes, a vision.
Because he 100%, and that's what they do. I think when he's able to like plan it and see where the cutback is from the depth, it allows him to utilize his skill set better and get vertical. Now, to your point about Kyle, the 2 interceptions, one was in zone. He didn't probably see the guy. You can't still make that mistake. The other one, he tried to force the issue into the corner. It was a great play. Nobody bid on it. Throw it away. Live to play another down, right? And then the fumble, that's bumpy. So again, clear it up. 3 turnovers. You and I talked about this last week. In a game like this, defense and running the football will win it. They traveled in this game, but you still can't turn the ball over. So cleaning up some things on the offensive line for Kyle, but also you got to be sound by protecting the football.
You do, and one of the big things too coming out of this, the question: can Marvin win a Heisman Trophy? And I think 2 touchdowns. Another, what do you have? Buck 23. He has some big plays, and people look at that. He has highlight reel plays. He's putting up big numbers. He's going to have a ton of scores this year. It's always generally a quarterback award. Devontae Smith won it because the quarterbacks didn't play well. And you look around college football, I think that there's room for him to potentially get going. Bo Nix played really well against Utah. We'll get into that. And so we'll see how these guys break out. But as long as Ohio State keeps winning and Marvin keeps playing well, he is going to be in that conversation. I believe he gets to New York. And the question then will be, will any of the other quarterbacks separate themselves enough to be able to win it? Or if they don't, I think that gives maybe a pathway or an opportunity for Marvin to get in there. So we'll take a quick break. We'll talk more about this game and some of the stuff that the key takeaways that we saw throughout the show. So stick with that. Also, we're going to take a look around college football because, as I mentioned, there were some upsets.
Yep.
And, survive and advance is the mantra. Phenomenal job by the Buckeyes getting that done as they take down Wisconsin 24-10. But around college football, there were some other things going on. So we'll take a look at all the happenings from Saturday coming up next. Hey, it's the Bobby Carpenter Show right here on the Big Play Network. Welcome back into the Bobby Carpenter Show. Quick correction. I mentioned the Buckeyes would be hosting Rutgers. This one will be in Piscataway. Oh, it's always such a great place to play. I know they enjoy traveling out there into the middle of New Jersey. But now we're going to take a little trip around college football. You laugh, Schlegs. How much did you love going to Piscataway?
I did not. It was good. Yeah. I'd rather be at home, but that's okay.
Yep.
We'll talk about that game later.
We can get to that in a little bit. Look around. Oklahoma strolled in this weekend undefeated. Went up to Lawrence, Kansas, Schlegs. And the talented Mr. Bean playing quarterback gave them a loss. As you looked at Kansas pulling a rabbit out of the hat, they were winning. Oklahoma came back like they were getting ready to turn that thing around. And all of a sudden, the Jayhawks get it done. And now there are no undefeated teams left in the Big 12.
Yeah, and guess what? It happens. I mean, that's, we talked about going up to Wisconsin and in this game. And before I get to Oklahoma, great play on the shovel pass by Tommy Eichenberg. He had to shock and shed, get over the top and read it. And again, we talked about guys getting better every single week using his hands. Really physical play, huge play in the game. I love that. But again, we got Oklahoma now going up, only undefeated team in the Big 12. You're going to play on the road at Kansas, kind of similar game, right? What has Kansas really done? All right, but they are a good football team. They're well coached. They're well prepared. And they go up there and they get beat every single week. It's hard to win games. And we saw some teams are like, they have no reason being close in these games and they come out with a win. It's a mindset, man. You're dealing with 18 to 22-year-olds on a weekly basis, highs and lows of the season, getting up for big games and then coming back down. No, it's consistency over the duration of the season while also keeping your guys healthy. And, you know, now Texas and Oklahoma right there with one loss.
Sitting there both with one loss. And Schlegs, Oklahoma gave up 255 yards to the Jayhawks on the ground. Brent Venables, defensive coach, you know he's not enjoying that.
Nope.
Texas smokes BYU, runs away with that one. Not a whole lot there, despite backup quarterback playing well with Quinn Ewers still on the bench. Oregon and Utah, I thought this was kind of a de facto Schlegs opportunity to get into the Pac-12 championship. Washington undefeated, Oregon and Utah both having one loss. 2 loss probably puts you out of it. Maybe. We'll see where it goes there, but Oregon getting it done in Salt Lake. It was on the road. Kyle Whittingham has a tough team, and they just could not get off the field as it was 21-6 at half. You thought maybe Utah has a chance to get in this thing in the second half. Unfortunately for them, they could not get it done. And Oregon pulling away in a very impressive fashion and rushing the ball for nearly 150 yards, which is something not many people do against the Utes.
Yeah, and again, when you go into like big time games like this, Utah had 2 interceptions and Oregon made them pay. And that's really what it boils down to. It's hard, again, for what everybody looks at this game versus Wisconsin and Ohio State, having 3 turnovers in that game and being -2 in the turnover margin and to still come away with a 14-point win when in theory you could probably won by 20 easily if we kick 2 field goals. But we're able to overcome that. We were able to overcome that by our defense. And then Utah had that kind of the same thing, but Oregon made them pay when they turn the ball over, and you can't do that when it's good on good.
You know, another game that was a lot closer. I think people thought Washington's still undefeated, but it's 28-26 going into the fourth quarter over Stanford, they took care of Colorado, huge comeback a couple weeks ago, but no one's mistaken the Stanford Cardinal team for, USC or Utah or Oregon or anything else. They take Washington to the brink. And so I'm just wondering, Schlegs, this is a couple games now where Washington's been in close games, one close and low scoring game that they were able to pull out last week against Arizona State. This one, a higher scoring game they're able to win, but maybe these Cougars don't seem, or the Huskies rather, don't seem quite as invincible as maybe they once were.
No, they're not. I mean, it's all predicated for them around their quarterback. So if you can affect that man, Penix Jr., right, you have an opportunity. And again, if you do all the little things right, if you take him out of their comfort zone, if you hit him, you play great special teams. And again, I know I keep going back to the Wisconsin game. I did not like the return. I did not like some of the angles, and I understand that. But Marco did a really nice job of pitting him, I believe, inside their 10 3 different times, which that flips the field, right? And then I think when they ran it back, I think our defense, I can't remember the game now. It's like so many things in my mind, but we were able to handle some field position changes very, very good. And then also keep them down there to flip the field. So we had a short field to go through. And I just say all these things because everything matters in all of these games, right? Like the most prepared team and the healthiest team has the better opportunity in all these games as you get now into November. So special teams have to be on point, turnover, securing of the football have to be on point, and then obviously running your game plan. All of those things contribute to whether you win or lose.
Absolutely. North Carolina lost previously. One loss game. They lose to Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech getting it done. Big comeback in the fourth quarter by the Yellow Jackets, the Ramblin' Wreck, taking care of business. Arizona knocking off Oregon State. So they're a 2-loss team. Now Penn State barely surviving. Indiana coming into Happy Valley. That was a 33-point spread, and it took all of Penn State's effort to put that thing away. They're late in the game. So obviously some big ones there. They had the protesters causing a delay in the USC Cal game. Schlegs, you're familiar with when fans and patrons come onto the field. I mean, what are we doing when those people are out there sitting around the 50-yard line?
Oh, guys, this was bumpy. And I of course my name gets brought up every single time something like this transpires.
You're a hero, Schlegs.
So in this, it's like, what were they protesting? I believe they were protesting a professor getting suspended for harassing another professor at another school. I don't know all the details, but what I know is if it's like that, though they're trespassing, and I don't know all the rules in California, nor do I want to know all their rules because I don't live there. Okay. So that being said,
You love
I'm just gonna
California Schlegs.
I'm just gonna let the security guards and the police handle that because they weren't making any type of like coming toward the sideline in any type of manner. Now, if they're going to go over and try to do something with our kids or like with the coaches and nobody else is intervening, then sure, something might have occurred. But I like to think that as I've gotten older, even when I did do that, I understood what was transpiring. So, I would just press pause on that and I would just let somebody else handle it, especially since it's in California. And who knows, I'd probably be in prison.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, a guy like you could do well in prison, Schlegs. I think you'd really thrive in that scenario. Two huge games in the this week, one in the Pac-12, one in the SEC. You have Washington going to USC.
Yep.
They are 4.5 point dogs, and then LSU going to Bama. LSU 7-point dogs. That Washington game, if they lose, it could be getting bumpy for the Pac-12, which I think is the deepest conference at the top. But no 2-loss team has made the CFP, and there's a lot of teams now. Oregon State, we just mentioned, Utah. Oregon still has 1 loss, but could the Pac-12 cannibalize itself? And do you think USC has a chance of beating Washington?
Well, I mean, with the way that USC plays defense, it's going to be very difficult because you had Cal and they had to go for a 2-point conversion and they ended up winning the game by 1. But you always have Caleb Williams, right? And he's a phenomenal quarterback. So you always have that, but can their defense hold up versus Washington? And it's just going to be, who has the ball last and can score. So I don't know that. But to your point, I think we view the Pac-12 as being some of the best right at the top because of the quarterback play and the ability of the quarterback. However, we just saw Utah and Oregon. You saw Washington versus Oregon, and like, every week matters in these, and I do believe they're going to cannibalize each other in some kind of capacity. And then you take that and you look at, the Big 12 and how they've already started to cannibalize each other. And that's going to come down to the Big 12 championship game. And then you see what they're doing in all the different paths of the SEC. Then you have Florida State now in the ACC, where really just a clear path, like just win all your games and you're fine, right? So does it leave room for 2 in the SEC or 2 in the Big 10? And is it now then the Big 12 and the Pac-12 on the outside 2 conferences on the outside looking in? We don't know, but that's also why we love college football.
It is. It's great. So we'll see kind of where that goes. LSU still controlling their destiny for the most part in the SEC, going to Bama. Yep. Bama looks good. And we wrote them off after losing to Texas at the beginning of the season. I know Kirby Smart in Georgia, who got a big win yesterday. They probably have no interest in playing Alabama in the SEC championship game. But we'll see. Bama's won, a handful of these meetings as of late. We'll see kind of where it goes. And could Bama as a 1-loss team, if they beat Georgia, make the playoff? I think absolutely 100%. With what they've been able to do. So stick around. We're long for a break. We got the Scarlet Knights coming up this week. A bowl-eligible Rutgers team,
right.
Schlegs, the Shiano man, getting it done out there in Piscataway. Rutgers sitting at 6-2. They'll be playing the Buckeyes this week. We'll talk about all that next, right here on the Big Play Network. Welcome back into the Bobby Carpenter Show, and the Buckeyes are rolling here into the month of November. Schlegs, November, as Jim Tress would always say, is for contenders, but you have to set yourself up in October and September to get there. And the Buckeyes have done just that, winning probably the 2 biggest games of any one team in college football. If you look at their 2 victories over a Notre Dame team and a Penn State team that are both ranked in the top 15. And by the way, Notre Dame putting it on Pittsburgh on Saturday. Heck of a job by Marcus Freeman getting it done with the Fighting Irish. So the Buckeyes now have put themselves in position, Schlegs, where they take care of Rutgers. They take care of Michigan State. They take care of Minnesota. Take care of Michigan. You're all right there before you. We'll get into all of the shenanigans and nonsense that's going on up at Michigan. But Rutgers 6-2.
Yep.
Now they're not ranked. They lost to Michigan. They lost to Wisconsin. Michigan beat them up pretty bad, but they did beat Indiana last week. Greg Schiano, former defensive coordinator at Ohio State, also hit a dude on a bicycle, turning into the Woody Hayes one morning. So he has that going for him as well. So you know what? He's all ball, like he's willing to do whatever it takes to get the job done.
Hey, you know what? One thing that we haven't covered here, Bob, and I, honestly, I've done a disservice, but Air Force right now, guys, 8-0,
Undefeated.
undefeated, 8-0,
Yeah.
best of all time. I was there in 2002 when we went 6-0, got beat by Notre Dame. Air Force, man, 8-0. They
Off we
play Army next week.
go into the
Into the
wild
wild.
blue
See, you know it.
yonder,
That's
flying
exactly right.
high
They play
into the
Army. So, hey, beat
sky.
Army next week. And then they got Hawaii, UNLV, and Boise. So they got a chance to go undefeated. I love it. All right. So let's talk about Rutgers and to Brandon Beam's point, and they get their S because they're bowl eligible. So good for them. But
For the
again,
first time in a decade, almost,
Yeah.
I think it was 2014, maybe. It was the last time, I think it was the year or two after Shiano left, was the last time they made a bowl game. It's been a minute.
and hey, tip of the cap to him, man. You're winning in New Jersey. That's awesome. So let's talk about them a little bit. So, pretty balanced on offense and defense, passing yards. They're 125th in the country. So what
Like,
is that?
they,
What is
they beat Indiana throwing the ball for 39 yards 2 weeks ago.
I know. So I mean, again, guess what, guys?
39 yards.
This is what it goes into. It's their quarterback and their running back. So their quarterback, I think it's like Will's stat, something like that. His name is Gavin.
Wimsat.
Okay. Anyways, his name is Gavin. All right. Gavin and Kyle, the running back. I'm just going to put their names out there. But listen, man, I mean, he's got 7 touchdowns. He has 4 interceptions. He's really not about throwing the football, but he also has rushed it for 7 touchdowns and 73 attempts to running back, 744 yards, 7 touchdowns. What do they want to do? They want to beat you on the ground. Now, I think the reason they're having a lot of success this year, Bob, is that their defense is significantly better. And that's the thing. I think they're giving up like 15 points a game, which is 12th in the country.
Yeah.
That's pretty good considering being Rutgers, right? So that's keeping them in the game, and they're running the football. Now, when we go take the overall picture of this, you're going to at Rutgers. And we didn't see this from Luke this last game of potentially some fakes. It probably didn't present itself, but we know that Greg Schiano is going to do some things because he also was here much like Fickle, right? And I remember, I don't know, a couple times ago, every trick play that they had in their bag was utilized in that game. And the game was significantly closer than it ever should have been, but it's coming and you got to stop it.
Well, that's what Ryan, I think, has always showed deference to guys who have been here. He enjoys. It's like, hey, just acknowledge the fact that we're up by 21 or 28. We could put another 28 on you if we need to, but we're not going to do that. But Greg Schiano keeps going after him, like faking a punt. I don't know if he kicked an onside kick. He's done stuff where you're like, dude, if you're like the little brother, you keep punching up. All right, now you're going to get the full weight of it. We're going to have to hammer you back down to where you belong.
Right? Boom. Yes. Frog you.
But I do give Greg Schiano credit because a lot of schools come in to play Ohio State. They don't try to win the game. They just try to limit the losses. Greg comes in here swinging, dude.
Yeah,
he goes and plays to win these football games. So not all the coaches do. So they're going to have some stuff. And I thought Vic would have a little more, but like you said, I don't think the game, the way it was playing out, or the opportunities really weren't there for maybe a fake or this or that. Maybe a reverse on a kickoff or a punt or something like that. Just something a little bit trickier. But Greg Schiano will have those. And so they need to be ready. They need to be locked in for it. As you mentioned, they don't throw the football. They have basically 2 running backs. They're more or less, Schlegs, a service academy team. And, you ask yourself, like, where are they in the tier, in the hierarchy of the Big Ten? Like, you got the big 3. I think you have Wisconsin and probably Iowa right there. But there's a pretty steep drop, I think, in between even those 2. And Maryland, I think, is in that tier. And the irony is, like, Maryland, great on offense, not so good on defense, but better. Rutgers, like, really, really good on defense. This will be a nice challenge for Ohio State in their rushing attack. I know Ohio State fans probably lament the fact, like, Greg, you're playing really good with these guys at Rutgers on defense. How come when you were here, you couldn't have the Ohio State guys playing better like this? You obviously had better players, but you couldn't get it done. It's a mind explosion.
Well, it's not, you know what though? I'm going to say this. It's not really a mind explosion. It's the fact that Urban wanted a certain style of defense. And again, this goes back into what is it that your coaches do? We always talk about like the personnel and what do your guys do, right? And like, again, this year,
Ohio State the linebackers like every single play. They had no second level of their defense.
But they were playing all man all the time. Like that, like that's not what your guys do. We've seen even Knowles a little bit. Hey, Ohio State defense, man, one of 3 teams that have not given up a 40-yard play this year. We've gotten to that approach where, like, man, we're going to get after you. We're going to bring pressure when we need to. but we're gonna rally to the football, make tackles, and make you out execute us. And we believe that we're gonna out execute you. Yeah. And our guys are playing really fast. They understand the defense, and they're starting to really know where their fits are. Especially we saw this in the running game. Wisconsin came on like boom, we hang our hat on running the football, and we were able to stop the run. They were averaging 179 yards a game. And we limited to 94. All right, I mean that Wisconsin game was a really physical game up front. I thought we answered the bell. Now you go in and you look at this Rutgers defense, man. They're top 12, like top 5 in the country. Top 5 in the country in passing defense. It will be a challenge, right? Yeah. They're gonna, and again, as you
double Marvin, they're gonna try to do everything they can to not let Marvin beat them.
And you know what? Go ahead, Bob. Go ahead.
Well, and there's one other thing because we're getting close to a break here, okay. But one other issue with this is I don't know if you realize Ohio State, like Lathan Ransom went out of that game. Yeah. Lathan Ransom is a huge piece of this Ohio State secondary. Now, I'm not worried about Rutgers throwing the football on us, but I'm concerned, as this week progresses, even if he doesn't play this week, but long-term, what's that injury look like for Lathan Ransom? Because it wasn't all that big of a deal. They flipped Sonny Styles back to his position, and then they kept Jordan Hancock on the field for all their nickel stuff. But you want to have all of those players available to you later in the season when you need to win some of these games. So and Lathan is smart. He's a big piece of this defense on getting everybody lined up and getting them rolling back there. He's the most experienced safety that they have as far as on-field reps. So you're going to want to have him out there as well.
Gotcha. Maybe besides Proctor, and I will say this, though, hats off to the coaches, DB coaches, again, coaching Styles up, right? He was able to come in there. He was in zone, had a good read on a guy, had a PBU. Like, that's what you got to do, man. Things happen. But next man up mentality, and we're starting to see that defensively. Saw it last week with Matthews Jr. Now we saw it this week with Styles. And again, he's a rangy guy. But you're right, though. The key is how do we get him back and make sure he's back for Michigan?
Absolutely. So, speaking of Michigan, Schlegs, a lot of stuff brewing up there. New stuff comes out by the day. Usually it's like a drip. I mean, there's like a gallon of water, it seems like, dumped on this thing every single day as more information continues to come out. So stay right here. We're going to take a quick commercial break. Schlegs and I will get into all of the stuff going on in the Team Up North scandal coming up right after this. It's the Bobby Carpenter Show on the Big Play Network. Back in here on the Bobby Carpenter Show. So thank you for tuning in and thank you for sticking with us. And now getting some of the biggest news of the day, the week, the month, the season. A lot of people think Michigan and the Wolverines, they may be the best team in college football. But Schlegs, is there a reason why they've been so good and had this abrupt turnaround the last 2 years? The sign stealing scandal, it's blowing up and it's everywhere. There's stuff all over the place. More and more stuff comes out every day. I had John U. Bacon on my show, who's a longtime Michigan writer, one of the most doubting guys for the Wolverines you're going to find. And we were talking about, some of this stuff, how it's happening, how it's getting out, all of this information, because I always try to say, if this is true, it's really bad. Now, there's a lot of steep accusations that you would think could only be there if they have this information, but who would be leaking it out? Well, there's a guy on the NCAA Infractions Committee who's a former guy. He's a former he was on the Board of Regents there, and he does not like Jim Harbaugh. They think he is the one that's leaking a lot of this out. I know a lot of the other Big Ten coaches were unhappy about it. They've suspected this for a while, but in case you've been buried under a rock, the allegations, Michigan was sending Connor Stallions out to other games, which you're not allowed to do to scout anymore. They changed that rule 30 years ago, but not to steal signs. Well, it's not just the fact he was, watching that. He did an elaborate network. He was paying other people to go to other games. They were videoing them during the game, which that to me is the biggest thing, Schlegs, where you can then go back and marry that up with the plays. And even if you have 3 guys signaling them in, you can still, if you give me a week, I think you and I, Schlegs, could sit down there and probably decode and figure out to about 85-90% of what the signs actually are and how that works. There's clips of this guy standing right beside Jesse Minter, their defensive coordinator, on the sidelines. They've showed some of the material that Connor Stallions has been giving out. And I don't know if it made a difference in the 2021 game, because I think that was they controlled the line of scrimmage. It was a little bit of a beatdown. But you look last year, they put their guys in some very advantageous situations on both sides of the ball, and almost as if they were reading their mail, Schlegs. And Harbaugh says he didn't know anything about it, had no idea that it was happening.
Am I supposed to comment on this? I'm just kidding.
The floor
So,
is yours.
So, hey, listen, man, I will say this. First off, Ohio State fans thinking about this Michigan deal, and it's absolutely mind-blowing. Like just the level that Michigan just like berates Ohio State. I mean, let's go back to 2000 to 2020. You won 3 freaking games in 2 decades. So pump the freaking brakes. All right. 2, I'm happy that Michigan football is back because it makes the game that much more significant. It's always great, but it's always great when the Big Ten championship is on the line in that game because it is the game. Now we go back and look at this and all the different things that go into this operation, right? Again, it breaks the rules. The rules are the rules for a reason. And really back in the day, it was like, you can't go advanced scout because the smaller teams couldn't go do those things. That's why we have all 22. We have film swap. Like I don't need to necessarily get their things.
You don't even really need to do it anymore. Everybody has all the film.
Everybody has all the film. Like, I mean, again, we were talking, somebody mentioned, Cade Stover and the hand on the tight end. Like, listen, when we watch film, like we're looking, man, is he going wide? What's his split between him and the tackle? Is it inside his foot? Is it outside his foot? Is he closer to the line of scrimmage? That means he's going to block on the perimeter. If it's inside, maybe he's pulling or down blocking so he can set the edge, right? So we're looking at all those things regardless, so we can go out there and perform. But the sign stealing and being able to say, hey, listen, this is a deep pass or this is whatever, we're going to change out of this and go to zone, or we're going to do whatever the case may be, and we're going to bring the house. Like that is definitely a competitive advantage that other schools aren't particularly doing. Do we do these things in game 100%? I personally, not necessarily looking at signs, but looking at what does the quarterback say when he wants to touch his helmet and he's going to throw a hot screen to a wide receiver. What is that called? Does he do it all the time? Right?
Hot Carl, I think. Hot
Carl. Who doesn't like one of those? I know you're a fan of it. But that being said, we do all of that within the midst of the game, and we might check out and go, Tony. Now we're playing Tampa 2 when they make a call at the line of scrimmage. This just takes it to another level that they did to have a competitive advantage, not just on Ohio State, but everybody they faced. And then conversely, you go and play TCU and absolutely get your butt kicked. Like that, poof, Copperfield, mind blown.
So they didn't scout TCU. There's a report that they gave signals, I think, to South Carolina because they had scouted Tennessee so that South Carolina could beat Tennessee, maybe. The Gamecocks. Then Ohio State, I guess, gave TCU the heads up on this sign stealing stuff. So they had dummy signals. So that's why Michigan looked like a dog chasing cars out there. I don't know. There's a lot of allegations. This thing is like I said, it is a labyrinth and a remarkable network. This happened. And listen, like you said, Schlegs, the sign stealing stuff, does that happen in game? Yeah, absolutely it does. If you can get a beat on it in game and different splits and the things that are happening, that's all good. But it's not like you can sit there and break it down for 80 hours during a week because you can line it all up and you have different people working on it. That to me is the element that kind of takes us over the top. And Jim Harbaugh can't say this dude he's very prominently around the program and around big influential guys. So listen, this thing about him not knowing or whatever, I can't believe it. The NCAA now has said, if you're the head coach, the buck stops with you. Don't hire scumbags if you don't want them to do scumbag things. Figure that out. And so ignorance is not an excuse in this. So going to take a quick break. It's our favorite segment of the week because it's the segment that we answer all your questions and the stuff that you guys want to know in our tailgate talk presented by Real Trek. That's coming up next on the Bobby Carpenter Show right on the Big Play Network. Welcome back into the show. Favorite segment of the program. It's our tailgate talk brought to you by Real Truck. And last year, Real Truck partnered with George Kittle, Travis Kelce, Dak Prescott to give away 3 ultimate tailgate trucks to community heroes through the Truck It list. This year, they're going to give away 1 ultimate tailgate truck to 1 lucky winner. It's a 2022 Toyota Tundra, tons of accessories. It's got a Pro Comp 2.5-inch lift kit Schlegs, the Rhino Pioneer platform roof rack, which looks tremendous. To learn how to enter, it's easy. Go give Real Truck a follow at Real Truck on Instagram. Click in the link in their bio, or you can just go visit them online at realtruck.com/win. It's completely free to enter, so there's no reason you shouldn't be doing it, Schlegs. You're a huge fan of Real Truck, aren't you?
Listen, man, I'm a real dude who has 2 real trucks, and all I use is Real Truck. I mean, everything from my my lights on my truck because I want some LEDs to my rims to, I got a Pro Comp. It's like a 3-inch lift on the Tacoma with some 33 Nitto grapplers on it. I mean, why not, man?
Throw a winch on it.
I got 2 winches, one for both of you.
I got two winches, one for both of you. I got some questions coming in. First question, Schlegs, coming from our guy, Marty Schlegs.
Marty!
Honest opinion now, no lying. Do you think Kyle McCord has what it takes to win a natty?
Yeah, I think Kyle has what it takes because who's your second best option? Devin Brown. So I think he is our best option. And I think he's our best option.
Devin Brown's hurt right now, so he's not a good option at all.
Well, I know he's out, right? So I think here's the deal. If you control the football and don't turn it over, now I think it's also the offensive line, right? So we want consistency. So if our offensive line can give him a clean pocket, I think he can deliver those throws. What else does that do? It allows us to do the over routes. When again, our wide receivers, and I always think Brian Hartline does a phenomenal job of this, our wide receivers and tight ends and running backs understand weaknesses of the defense and where to sit and how to get there. And we saw it on some of the shallow crossers of K just running a guy into another guy that picks him off. He's not blocking him. He's like, well, I'm going to run you into it because you guys don't have your head on a swivel. And your coaches obviously didn't teach you levels. We know that very well, Bob. So that being said, I think that Kyle can be that guy if he doesn't turn the ball over because of the way our defense has been playing this year, Bob.
Defense has been playing great. And I think Kyle has proven if he has time, he'll carve you up. Yep. Offensive line has to give him time. Now, he can't turn the ball over, but he was on his back a lot on Saturday night. So they need to get that cleaned up. If you can get the running game going, it helps a lot as well. Takes a lot of heat off of him. But I love what Kyle's doing. I think he's getting better. Little setback against Wisconsin. Not his best game. No, listen, he's been very, very clean all year. Madison is an incredibly tough place to play. It's loud. It's raucous. Fick was going to have some stuff for him. They blitzed a lot, and a lot of the issues were their inability to pick it up. Kyle had, the intentional grounding. He got sacked 4 times. Wasn't necessarily his greatest game. Next question here coming from Chad Shuck. Got the American flag on there, so we love it. Cade Stover's second receiving yards. 0 receptions against Wisconsin. I don't even think he was targeted, Schlegs. Why?
Well, I think if you guys go back to the Penn State game, and I don't remember when it happened. I believe it was early on. He left the game and he came back and he's wearing a brace. Like you guys saw the brace. Did they really even need him in that game? No, you saw a lot more G. Scott on some of those routes, but he's, I believe, a better perimeter blocker. So that's why he was in, but he's still there. He's still a threat. He still ran routes. Why he wasn't targeted, I don't know. I'm sure they wanted to target him on a couple of plays that didn't necessarily develop, but it happens. So, that's also why you have Marvin. It's a team game, right? You have Marvin. Fleming got hurt, right? I think it was a shoulder injury. Yeah. That kind of took some things out. Tate has to come in. Great. We're using Trevion in different ways. The good thing is, like you just saw an Ohio State team versus a good Wisconsin defense still be able to go put up 24 points, could have put up more. They had 407 yards in the game, and they did it by being very balanced on the ground and in the air. And that's when we really are at our best, doing what we did in this game versus a very good team in Wisconsin.
It is, and I think you mentioned the injury might be a little bit to do with it. They're getting Scott in there a little bit more to try to help that out. You mentioned him kind of hanging and helping the tackle. I think some of the blocking, Cade's really involved in. But obviously had huge plays against Wisconsin. He's going to continue to make those big plays. So sometimes just feature some other guys. I think there was probably room for him to probably make some plays on Saturday night. I guarantee you Ryan's going back and looking and saying, hey, how can we get Cade Stover the ball this coming week to make sure that we're featuring this guy who's been a nice weapon down the middle of the field and has helped Kyle out a ton. All right, last question here coming from Charles. The slow starts this year have been noticeable even on the D at times, not versus Whiskey, thank goodness. Is there a motivational issue in the second half? The O-line and McCord played much better after taking some lumps.
Slow starts. So I think the only thing about the defense, and I heard people say, like, well, they came out flat in that first drive. And I thought the first drive, remember, you always look at the last 5 minutes of the first half and the first 5 minutes of the second half and what you do. And I thought that Wisconsin had a little bit of an answer. And the answer was, hey, if you're going to vacate the middle and only rush 4 and get out of your lanes and not have somebody on the quarterback, then our quarterback can run for 25 yards. And they did that. They had a good running catch, right? The guy caught the ball. It was a short intermediate pass. He was able to turn up there, get some positive yardage. The very next play, they went to another pass. The quarterback ran the ball for 25 something yards, right? So guess what? They're coaches too. They get paid too. They made halftime adjustments too, just like you did. So I wouldn't say it's necessarily coming out flat. It's just you got to be able to adjust. And then after that, they adjusted, right? You saw a guy kind of spying a little bit. You saw some of the pressures, making sure that there's a guy up front. He tried to escape the pocket one time, and Talik was right there to gobble him up. So
yeah, Talik I thought played really well too.
Really well. We didn't even mention him, right? So he had another PBU. He has 5 PBUs on the year, man, doing a really good job of getting his hand up.
A big meaty arm, Schlegs, he can throw up there.
Super thick. Everybody likes that. So that being said, listen, I don't know. I don't think it's a motivational issue. I just think it's about going out and playing. What do you think, Bob?
Well, people always say like, does Ryan his pregame speech is not good enough. Like, dude,
come on.
You played Ohio State, all right? This isn't little league football. Yeah. Like where I have to tell my kids in warm-ups, 3rd, 4th graders, like, we're slow. All right, go touch the white line and sprint back. Like, let's get it going a little bit because you guys stayed up too late last night playing Minecraft or whatever the heck you're doing doing some late night gaming. Like these guys are ready to go. They're locked in. It's not a motivational thing. Listen, they had a good drive going in that first drive offensively. You get the 4th down, you go for it. You're kind of in no man's land on the 33. Yep. And, sometimes it doesn't work out. I'd like to see him obviously convert that and go get 7. The thing is, we've seen this offense with Ryan be so fast to start games for so long. I don't know if it's that they start slow. I just don't think that Ryan goes out and tries to score 21 points in 3 possessions now because and not that you're not trying to score, but you don't need to be needlessly aggressive when you have a good defense.
And I think another thing too, Bob, is that people look at, somebody brought this up, but they look at McCord and it's not like he's super fiery. CJ was like that too. Like he wasn't super fiery, but like he does it in a different manner. It doesn't mean he's not juiced up and doesn't mean he doesn't want to compete. It doesn't mean he's not motivated. That's his personality. AJ wasn't a talker, man. AJ just played really freaking hard. So like pump the brakes on it. Like you don't have to see it. I think people too much look at high school and they get all these hype videos that they see online. And they're looking at Pop Warner and all these things that we got to go motivate them. Like you're at Ohio State, you watch film all freaking week. Yep. These dudes are motivated to go knock somebody's dick off on Saturday, man. So like,
absolutely,
pump the brakes, man. What's the score? The score is 24-10. You did a great job. Great freaking win in Madison. Proof David Copperfield. On to the next. You got Rutgers.
All right, coming up, we'll wrap up the show with our final segment, give you our parting thoughts. This is the Bobby Carpenter Show right here on the Big Play Network. All right, final segment of the program here. Parting thoughts, Schlegs. Ohio State facing their former defensive coordinator now for the 2nd week in a row with the Shiano man. And so that might add a little bit of intrigue to this game in Piscataway. And then one final little nugget, little question for you to kind of chew on. If you take Ryan Day out of the equation, who's the best coach in the Big Ten right now?
Terrible question for me. I mean, I have no clue. I mean, I would probably say Fick. But that's because I know him and I love him. I mean, Kirk Ferentz, man, he's got a son. He's the highest paid employee. I'm just kidding. I'm not going there.
I would say this, Kirk Ferentz. I mean, his ability to overcome his offensive struggles and still win 10 games a year is pretty darn impressive.
Yeah, PJ Fleck right now 4-1 in the Big Ten West. 5-3 overall.
Your boy Schlegs.
Matt Rule. They're 4-1 in conference right now, I believe. No, 3-2. 3-2. But anyways, I mean, I don't know. Ryan's the best, so that's what I say. I'm not going to mention Harbaugh because I'm not. So Ryan is.
Because I'm not. Maybe your boy Jimmy Franklin. I mean, there's a lot of options out there that we could potentially look at. The Shiano man with what he's done. I mean, they're 6-2 at Rutgers. If you can win 8 games at Rutgers, especially the way everything was set up the last decade when they've come in and been in the East, like that to me is a massive win. So he has a chance to maybe get to 8 this year. We'll see if he can ultimately do it. Probably not getting that 7th win against the Buckeyes this weekend. No. But you know what? There's a lot of good stuff out there for him. Never played against Rutgers. They weren't in the league back when we were playing, Schlegs. I know you went against them as a coach. Not a whole lot in Piscataway. Shouldn't be an overwhelmingly great game. But the key for the Buckeyes here over the next couple of weeks, to me, you want to continue to improve. You want to stay honed in. You want to work on that offensive line play. Defense just continue to keep playing well. But the main thing is keeping guys healthy and then staying healthy. Lathan Ransom went out of the game. They're going to have to make sure that he's ready to go. But looking forward to this one in Piscataway for the Buckeyes. Thank you for tuning in to the Bobby Carpenter Show. Stay around next week right here on the Big Play Network.